I've reviewed seasons. I've done redrafts. I've talked about hockey history all the way from 1917 right up until, well, now. And I want to talk about drafts. I was looking at the hockey reference site, and I'm like, the 1979 draft is a good starting point. So normally in my playlists, I'll start with 1981. But I'm going to start with 1979 because this is where all the greatness really starts. So the NHL dropped the entry draft age from 20 to 19. And this is where the WHA was coming into the NHL. And we saw some pretty big names join the league. There's only 126 picks in this draft. This is the most recent draft that has less than 200 players in it. So it shows that sometimes quality is really more important than quantity. Now, the most points out of that draft year, Mark Messier, 1,887. He also leads them in games played, of course. Very nearly caught Gordie Howe and decided to retire rather than catch Gordie. Most goals scored, Mike Gartner, 708. So Hall of Famers, there's a bunch of them. Now, this is where I'm going to have to alter things as I get into newer drafts. 500 goals. There are 3 players from that draft that have 500 goals in their NHL careers. 1,000 points, 7 players with 1,000 points in that draft class. 1,000 games, 17 players out of 126. That's a pretty good percentage of guys that played in the league for a long time. So, when you get into the winners side of this draft, you've got to see the Oilers as being the winners. They draft Lowe, Messier, and Anderson, and Lowe's the highest draft pick at 21. And I don't even have him on the steals board because there's a lot of steals in this draft. Again, it was a very stacked draft. The losers, the Colorado Rockies. You look at the Colorado Rockies and how this team fell apart. They drafted Ramage. Good. One of those 1,000-point players is Ramage. Good player. But in this draft, probably shouldn't have gone number 1. Peters. Not a Peters that you know, in all likelihood. Dillon and Atwell. Unless you're related to that Steve Peters, in which case, there he is. And Dillon and Atwell. None of these guys played more than, I think, like 22 games in their career. Peters played 2. So Colorado, who had the number 1 draft pick and were really, really, really bad, only had 4 draft picks in 6 rounds. And other than Ramage, none of them were early picks. So that's a gigantic fail and is a big part of the reason why the Rockies end up in New Jersey. Their drafting wasn't very good either. And then at the trade table, part of that was a problem too, because here you go. We don't need that number 1 pick either. We'll get to Wickenheiser in the next video. Most penalty minutes, Dale Hunter. Dale Hunter, 3,565 penalty minutes. He leads there. Not really a surprise for anybody who watched Dale Hunter play. Now, personally, I thought at the end of Dale Hunter's career, his numbers were good enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. But again, I think the Pierre Turgeon incident is why he's not there. I do. I think that's what it is. Best goaltender from the draft. This is really one of those subjective things. I went with Pelly Lindbergh. Now, Walmsley played the most games and played the longest career. Lindbergh, of course, his life was cut short. At the time that he passed, his record was 157 wins, 87 losses, 49 ties, and he had an .887 save percentage. But I think he was the best goaltender in that draft class. We'll come back to goaltenders in a second here. Steals from that draft. Ray Borg at number 8. Yeah. Number 8 in that draft was Ray Borg, who, for the record, was leader in plus-minus out of that draft class with a plus 527 over his career. Michel Goulet was drafted 20th. This is the reason why I'm wearing Quebec, because they had a pretty good draft. And then they drafted Dale Hunter, 41st. Right before Neil Broughton went 42nd. Guy Carbonneau goes at 44. Mark Messier goes at 48. And Glenn Anderson went at 69. Stop chuckling. So those are your draft steals. And again, it was a stacked draft. And then your busts. Notice Vancouver's up here twice. Notice that it's Hartford, Winnipeg, Vancouver, Vancouver. Yeah. Getting set for the 80s. Ray Allison at 18 to Hartford. I liked him, but he only played 230-some games. Jimmy Mann went 19th to Winnipeg. Keep in mind, Kevin Lowe went 21st to the Oilers. And at 20th, Michel Goulet goes to the Quebec Nordiques. Probably in hindsight wouldn't have wanted to draft Mann. Mann was a very good physical player who just the offense wasn't there. The expected offense just wasn't there. Ken Ellicott, drafted at 47th by Vancouver. I wouldn't have that on the board at all. Except the next draft pick was Mark Messier. Because 47 I don't consider a bust, but the next draft pick is Mark Messier. And then Vancouver in the next round drafts Art Rutland. I think it's Art Rutland. Never played a game in the NHL at 68. Right ahead of Glenn Anderson. The Vancouver Canucks could have drafted Messier and Anderson. We'll never know. We'll never know what might have been, right? Now, of course, Messier would show up in Vancouver almost 2 decades after this to try to destroy Vancouver. But along the way, he's a pretty good player. What am I saying? They just would have traded him for a bag of pucks. On his 21st birthday, like with Neely, they just would have said, we're shipping you out. They would have sent him to Buffalo or something for a third-round pick or something like that. Glenn Anderson, they just would have shipped him out to probably Toronto to get Builder Lego back, something like that. Anyways, so there you go. Quick little videos. 1979 draft. And just looking at how great this draft was. This was a fantastic draft. And I plan to do the other drafts as well. And the videos will probably get a little bit longer as these videos go along. Because be more current players. But again, kind of fun to look at. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.